Test, check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Welcome to a new SSCHNITTLABOR playlist, which is called SSCHNITTLABOR Sound Check. This is a project which we wanted to approach actually already since quite a long time. But since we were kind of active in different playlists of SSCHNITTLABOR and also all kind of other projects, we just didn't manage until now. This playlist is going to focus on the acoustic aspect of video creation, which is actually very important. Sometimes we could even say it's more important than the video itself. At least sound has a very strong influence on whatever we see with our eyes. So since now this new update of SOUNDFORGE number 12 has been published, we are really excited to be able to present this software a little bit to you, but also it may seem to be a little bit conservative. Such a software which is really not so fancy, like we have Logic Audio or Cubase or Ableton Live, for example. SOUNDFORGE is really kind of reduced to the max. It's a very simple software tool, but it is very powerful at the same time. You know, I'm kind of like a dinosaur. I was working with SOUNDFORGE at a time when it was still a Sonic Foundry product before it got taken over by Sony, and now it is produced by MAGIX, this latest version. But honestly, this was a time when I was pretty much in kind of experimental radio things and also working with electronic music, working as a DJ and so forth. And during this time, I always liked very much SOUNDFORGE. It was just simply displaying the waveforms the way they were, and then they offered all these kind of nice integrated effects, which were really handy when you wanted to use them for manipulating your sounds. So why would you install such a kind of traditional software product on your computer? Well, they have done a lot now, MAGIX. And since they also bought the very revolutionary spectral layers, which also once was developed by Sony, and they put it into the bundle together with the SOUNDFORGE Pro 12 suite, this really was for me the decision to go for it. And I just now want to introduce you to some of the nice new functions and effects which are available with SOUNDFORGE Pro 12. And then maybe later in an add-on video, I will go also in a little bit greater detail into the spectral layers. Okay, so now we are already within the software. SOUNDFORGE looks like something like that. Second. That's the SOUNDFORGE Pro, published really just recently. And it's a professional tool. So my little presentation of the software here is going to be split into 5 major parts, if you will. It will be possible for you to skip certain parts. For example, if you are already a SOUNDFORGE user, then you may not be interested in a general introduction to the software. So in the description below this video, you will find some kind of time warp links, which will bring you to the different parts which may be of your interest. So first, it will be general introduction, like creating a file, fading in and out, cutting, copying, mixing. This will be also connected with some more detail, because you cannot only work with stereo files. There is also possible to use much more tracks at the same time, which maybe not all of the SOUNDFORGE users may have known until now. I'll explain about the pitch and shift effects and so forth. The second part, we will go a little bit more into modifying sound itself, and I want to show you how really deep you can go into these kind of processes. Since SOUNDFORGE is really a very powerful and precise tool in this way, much more precise than many other sound software out there. Then there will be one part where I explain how you can use SOUNDFORGE basically as a kind of radio editing software or for producing podcasts and so on. It's really also very good in this field. And I will explain you different ways on how to work your way through this process. The next section then, it will be about how to kind of make your podcasts or speeches more compact and more accessible for your listeners. Next part then, it will focus on the professional workflow with SOUNDFORGE. Because it's not only working on one file, you can also process many files in one go using SOUNDFORGE. And finally, this will be maybe also very interesting for most of the friends who know SOUNDFORGE already. I want to give you just an impression of all these very nice new tools which are integrated in SOUNDFORGE, yeah, like the nice isotope and like some analog effects and some special SOUNDFORGE effects which have been newly developed, some vintage stuff and so forth. So let's jump right in. First, if you don't know anything, this is really a sound software which goes to the essence. You can create a new file, and then you have like two stereo tracks. Track number 1 up here, the left one, and the right one down here. Since now you don't hear anything, imagine if you don't have a microphone, if you don't have any music available, you can also generate some basic sounds within SOUNDFORGE. So therefore we go to the insert menu and then to synthesis. And then here you can guess already this is like a sine wave. We will create a sine wave at 432 Hertz, which is more common to our ears. Even though most of the instruments today, they're tuned to 440, which is the international standard going back to something like 1900, maybe in the 40s or 30s, 40s, they were trying to push this through. You can also create like a gradient of frequencies and so on, but here we just want to create a very simple sine wave to start with. Sine wave sounds most soft, basically. And we don't want to have it too loud, so maybe we go to minus 26 decibel. And then we hit OK. This is going to be, let's say, maybe 6 seconds is enough. And here we have it. And when we play, it sounds like that. Great. Sounds almost like a test tone from the old TV time. So, but you have different zoom functions, plus and minus. You can also just zoom using your scroll wheel. And scrolling down, you get really to the essence. Yeah. So here, for example, let's use this other zoom level, which is about the like how deep you zoom into the wave itself. And when you go out a little bit from this more, you really understand, okay, this was a sine wave which we have been creating. And a little part of it would sound like this. We go to the repeat function and then just listening to this very small fraction here, it sounds more maybe like an alarm or almost like a bee or a saw, because this is not such a soft form anymore. It has now edges. Yeah. So just to understand how sound looks like when you go really deep into like look at it with a magnifying glass, if you will. So when you think, for example, 6 seconds is now not enough, you want to have a longer sound, you copy this part, you go to the end, and string v, then you have a 12 minutes sound in this case. Just to show you the basic principle, Control Z to undo this. We have again 6 seconds, also marked down here. Okay, so what you can do with this, for example, most easily is you fade it in, you mark a certain region, like for example, around 1 second. You want to process this by creating a linear fade. And there you have it. And you see also it's very like linear. These kind of sine waves, they are becoming larger, and that's why the sound becomes louder. That's what it sounds like. And in the end, I will show you the same principle one more. Maybe we will do a 2 seconds fade out with this sine wave. And instead of just fading it out linear, you can also go into the graphic fade mode. And here you can basically draw your like idea of how you want to have it faded out. So this is like down to 50% loudness from the original loudness. And then you can create these fancy forms, also maybe with different kind of fade types, like smooth, it would more look like this. Or here you then from there you want to go slowly down like this. And maybe also we want to create a nicer slow fade for this one. Just to show you what is possible here, you have always a preview on this, which will be in very good quality, which you can either bypass, then you hear the way it sounds like now, or you just go directly to the assuming to the result that you can assume, and then if you like it, maybe you want to have it more kind of like maybe this one is too much, you just right click on it and delete it. And then in the end we can also take away this one, and to have a smooth downgrade, this will then look like this and sound like that. Okay, so this is really like very basic stuff. The copy function I showed you, it's also possible if you don't want to, like for example, let's say we copy the whole file and then we go to this point. If I click string v, then it will basically, this copied part of the file will enter into the middle of this wave. And this will create a fraction which sounds like this. And also here. But this is, we don't really want this. This is like a hard edge being created. It's also possible to mix things. And using this function, you have to go to Edit. And then you will go to Paste Special. And you go to a mixing function. Here you can define precisely how you want the sound from the clipboard to be mixed into the following one, with which kind of loudness and how long, which kind of waveform you wish, and so forth. Then applying this would lead to something like this, because these two Z waves now they are added and the volume is increased like that. So here this is the marker region. If you double click up here, then the whole file will be selected. Okay, just to give you a general idea. You can do this with all kind of content of sound, not only in 44 kilohertz as we are here. You see this, for example, in the file properties. This is quite like a low resolution file. I mean, it's equal to the CD quality, which was standard for many years. 16-bit and stereo. You can work up to 96 kilohertz, 24-bit or 36-bit. This, since the whole SOUNDFORGE is now running on 64 bits, there's really no problems with sound depths whatsoever. Okay, so having said this, I want to show you a little next step. I mean, there is all kind of effects and manipulation tools and so forth. Impossible to explain all at once in an introduction video. But let's say you want to create a harmony on the basis of this 432 Hertz frequency. So we can create a new stereo file. We can basically just tile windows in such a way. Maybe I want to take this one over here because this is the first we were working with. And then I have this next window as an example. Control 8 will copy all this and we will put it in here. Also here I'm going to zoom a little bit closer to this waveform. So to create a classical harmony, like in minor, if imagine like your piano, digital piano, or like from some kind of enthusiast would tune the whole piano to 432 Hertz. Let's not go too much into this discussion because many people would say it's not possible because the piano is built especially for 440 and it will sound bad with 432 Hertz, but there's different tastes and possibilities and also many different pianos on this planet. But this is more the 432 Hertz topic, which you can also research in Google looking for 432 Hertz music. Here I just want to work with the very basics, and so we go now with this file to effects. And here we have, for example, different methods of how to pitch this sound. Using a shift function, you can say, okay, I want to shift this one up 3 semitones, which will create like a minor terz, which sounds like this, comparing to the original sound, which we had before. So you can apply this to this file, then we have one like this and one like this. Of course, you can just mix those into each other. But also you see here it was changing the time a little bit, yeah? So let's go back with this one. And instead of using this first pitch function, we will now go to the band function, which is basically the same function. Also, you can go up for 3 semitones, but you have this graphical representation. And we want to preserve the original duration, which we could have also been using with the first menu, which we were just using before. Again, 3 semitones. That's what it sounds like. And okay. So then we have this one here, copy. We go back to this file. We go to the position 1 of this, and then we go to edit, paste special, and mix. We want to have both with the same volume, everything should stay same, but we want to create this kind of turds, so we fill it in, and then we have, as a result, which is not so bad, yeah? We go back, maybe we start with a second fade in of this element instead. String file, oops, sorry. So we first blend in the first sound, and then we want to have the second one, which will just make the whole file a little bit longer. Paste special, mix, same settings, okay. Also, I will zoom out a little bit from this waveform. That's what we have now as a result. Okay. Why not? Double clicking up here will mark the whole region, as I showed you already. We will fit in the same frequency, one more, which we already uplifted before. It was still in our memory, and we will go 4 semitones higher even with the same. So from this one we will go 4 semitones higher to create a perfect chord, and we will again preserve the original duration. So we have la da da, okay, and then again we mark all this here, copy, and we will again not go, we will put it here when both sounds are working together. Sorry, and we will not just paste it in, but we will paste special, we will mix it, same way. Okay, it's becoming still a little bit louder, and now we have these three together, these three different sine waves coming from the same origin. Let's mark the whole region. So what is really interesting, that here now in the end, if you listen closely, it sounds a little bit as if this sine wave would be weeping. Basically, it's not as clear anymore. Also here in between there is some kind of very fine cracky noise in the background. It's like, do you hear this? This has a certain reason, which I will explain you using a different example, because these kind of sine waves, they are very minimalistic, and they don't really maybe give you a proper idea of the potential of this software. So we will go for a different file now, which I downloaded from YouTube. It's called Generations Away by Unicorn Heads. And of course, this will also be mentioned in the description below the video, as I always do with the music that I use for my videos in YouTube. So when we take this file here, it sounds, maybe we will make it a little bit less loud, because otherwise, comparing to the microphone input, it will be too strong. I will maybe sample the maximum noise to around something like, maybe not too loud, yeah. Sometimes I have a tick with the numbers. Let's try this one. Okay. Then we have a bass coming SOUNDFORGE is perfect for creating loops exactly the way you want them, like in the heights and lengths and so forth. So let's find a moment where everything starts. Something like here, I think. Then you can also zoom closely into this place. I go shift position 1, but then if you delete this, it will not take the whole rest of it. So we want to really make a bigger field, or we just want to zoom to the beginning. Everything which is now black here, this is all marked. And I'm going to delete this, and now we start. If you want to be more precise, actually you can just take this little region and also fade it in to have a softer start. Like this. Okay, and here would start the next one. Okay, I think maybe this one is already enough. Okay, we have the next beat starting right here, and also we will probably start in this place. Okay. I will now select all the materials until the very end. Oops, zoom out a little bit, sorry, otherwise we take ages for this process. And take all this away, and then also if you want to be more precise, you go to the very end, and maybe this little bit here you want to fade out too. Fade out. Okay. Classical kind of like rock, whatever loop. We will again, just as an example, go to some very basic things. Like for example, we reverse the whole thing. Not so special. For example, we can mute the whole thing in one thing. It's interesting to create breaks, whatever. Control Z to go back. We can use an equalizer. Different equalizers, like mixture between graphic and parametric, which would be the paragraphic here. Then you lift up these things. This is all basic stuff that existed in SOUNDFORGE since a long time. Okay, you have all kind of, let's say, compressors, distortions, delays. The wavehammer, it's like also very interesting compressor, like for example lifting up the bass a little bit. So most of these things are already quite known, but let's get back to this pitch shift function. We have now, wait a second, with this function here, double click here brings us down, double click here brings us down. So We want just now to have this kind of like run out. It's like an old record that you imagine, which is like a vinyl record, which is just stopping. You bend this one down and you tell this waveform that this should be like a slow fade. So slowly it will just kind of run out, which then sounds, let's make it a little bit more extreme, like 2 full octaves, like this. Doesn't sound so clean. Let's really render it and then listen to it. Also here you could now create all kind of harmonies, but what I'm interested in is really the end part, like in the sine wave before also. When you just listen to this one here. Again, it sounds a little bit scratchy, and this is because SOUNDFORGE is trying to cheat us here. It's kind of lowering the frequencies by an effect. But basically the frequencies, they are modified, and this, our ears, which are very sensitive, they will hear this. So if I undo this and I try to create a compromise between sound quality and really also length, so you have to be flexible on one side. Either it's with the quality or it's with changing the length. Then we go to effects, pitch and bend. And we don't keep the original duration. And then here, SOUNDFORGE really shows us the power of what it can do by really taking these wavelengths and smoothly stretching them out into the space. But it's almost like a natural process which doesn't really modify any of the sequences, any of the frequencies, except by changing their length. So this, when we render it, creates, of course, a longer file, which is now 25 seconds. But you will see that in the end here, the sound quality is still very strong and undistracted. Do you hear how much the bass was still present? Let's listen to the whole loop now. Okay, so this was the impression about the music modification aspect that you can do with the basic functions which are available in SOUNDFORGE. Actually, I will create a new file. I want to speak now about a possibility how to improve the sound quality of a dialogue or a podcast, whatever you want to produce using SOUNDFORGE. This will be in 2 parts. The first part is really optimizing sound quality. And then part number 3, it's quite short. It will just show you how to speed up your podcast and make it create some kind of flow if you want. So I will create a new stereo file. And here for a second, I'm going to change the microphone, because this other microphone, on one hand, it has a different sound characteristic. And also with this connection, it creates a slightly stronger background noise. which we now want to use to be able to show how to remove it in the best possible way. So this is what I'm going for in the 1 second. Let me just turn down this microphone. And here I record some speech using a different microphone with some intentional errors to make you understand. So far we are back now to the other microphone. That's enough. I think as you saw already, these little tickings here in the end we can delete. This was the main message which we wanted to focus on, and also in the beginning here, this one we will take away, and the speaker starts. And here I record some speech. So here in between you hear this kind of noise, yeah? Nothing much happening, but noise. And this is not part of the information that you want to transport. It's the media itself which basically creates some kind of noise. And if I turn down my volume for a second and then we just listen to the very recording, it's still there. Okay, the point is we can double click to mark everything, and then we have different ways of how we want to approach this. Yeah? One method would be a classical SOUNDFORGE method. You go to Effects and then Noise Gate. But the noise gate, it's actually quite radical. So I will give you an idea by showing you what noise gate is doing. Is basically cutting down every side noise, in this case, which will be lower than minus 20 decibel. So let's listen to this. I will also take down my microphone at the same time. And here I record some. You see, it sounded very artificial. Even if we take this level a little bit more down. And here I record some. Still, the gradient between sound and no sound is actually quite rough. This you can try to make a little bit smoother by increasing the attack time and also the release time, which then results into something like that. And here I record some speech using a different microphone. So here was one more error, which anyway we forgot to basically delete. I'll take it away right now. So also the message comes closer together. Speech using a different microphone. Let's maybe not use this harsh way as I was trying to demonstrate before. Instead, now we go to the tools and then noise reduction. So this is more kind of trying to blend in such a noise reduction effect. More soft comparing to the noise gate. Let's preview this one, okay? And here I'm also going to use the bypass in between to give you a different idea of what is with the effect and without it. And here I record some speech. That's already an interesting change. You have different standard presets, and of course you can always change these things. You can also create like a noise print. So this is then the general idea what it has of the background noise. And it becomes much more silent. This would be a second method. Let's go for a third. This is actually already part of the new effects which were not existing in the old version of SOUNDFORGE. It's a little preview when you go to effects. And then you find the dehisser. There's also different menus through which you can access the dehisser. And the dehisser is doing something like this in standard resolution. And here I record some speech using a different microphone. So this would be the style you can apply for pop music, but we are having a speech, so let's try this one also. And here I record some speech. So this would be a third method. And then we have another very nice VST3 64-bit plugin, which you find also under Isotope. And then you go to the RX6 voice denoise. You have the VST3 version of it. And there's updates available, which we don't want to take care about now. And this one would make the sound recording into something like this. I will again take down my microphone for a second. And here I record some speech using a different microphone. So this was the dialogue version, and of course also here you can fine-tune all the values the way you want. Yeah, so you can just really fine-tune everything so that you will have a nice silence in the background. I think, you know, when before we were using the noise gate, this was a little bit too radical in the sense of for speech, and this maybe you would use more for some kind of experimental approach to sound. But I think for now we will decide to use this voice denoiser, and we will apply it. That's actually quite fast. And this is what we have now. And since this is like a dialogue, also we have some different other options. Just to also give you another preview for the nectar elements, for example. Here you can use some kind of voice standard settings. Nectar dialogue, for example, sounds like that. And here I record some And here I record some. So everything comes much more into the foreground. Let's also apply this one. Since you may have recognized there is still very long pauses which don't really belong into the message, yeah? So we want to make it into a flow. And this is now already the third part. And here I want to show you a very interesting secret within SOUNDFORGE. I mean, it must not always be as extreme as in this example here, but sometimes you may want to speak about something and then you prefer to take a little pause thinking about the next sentence instead of just speaking and then later having to go through all the material and re-speak everything. So we have a very nice function which is called the auto trim or crop function, with again also different options. So this would be someone who takes like an effect which takes different phrases closer together and deletes basically silence in between. So everything which is recognized as a silence below 32 decibel will just be automatically recognized. The software is going to create regions and bring everything much more closer together. Here you can define how long should be the fine fade in so that it doesn't sound so artificial with strong cuts in between. And here you can also define a minimum interphrase and so on. But let's just use this standard setting here, phrase concentrator 1, and apply it. And now you see all the audio material has jumped much closer together, and it sounds also much more as a normal conversation or a speech, as you can hear. Now I will take down my microphone. And here I record some speech using a different microphone with some intentional errors to make you understand. And here, okay, maybe it still doesn't sound so completely natural, but this was also because I added intentionally these long pauses in between to demonstrate this effect. Let's say if you would like the recording like this, then you would just select parts of it which you can move in all directions and so on. But let's say you want to select everything, Control A, and then here you can remove all markers from this area. And what is left is really like your compact kind of sound file. So far, this was the third part. In the fourth part, I also want to show you that this is a very professional tool besides all the inbuilt effects and so forth. For example, all those kind of inbuilt effects, they're very strong tools, but maybe sometimes you will have a lot of different audio files recorded at different dates and so forth, and you have certain number to process, and you don't want to do this in simple steps. Therefore, you can go to Tools, and now as you see, we have already 4 files open. You go to the batch converter. Here also it shows these different kind of files. And here you have all the effects available, which can also be set to different standard settings. You can add those kind of effects as you like. And then you basically can have them run through all this kind of content here. This was the one aspect. And the second aspect is also that sometimes it's maybe not really, you don't really want to apply one effect only. Maybe sometimes you find a certain combination of different effects which are suitable for different, let's say, different file types. Then you can also create effect chains or plug-in chains. For example, by going to the FX favorites, and then you call the plug-in chain here. And then again, same as before, you can add from all these kind of different elements, different VST effects or effects created by MAGIX and so forth in an open combination, like you do in some of the video softwares. And you can have them both applied, which just in this example would already turn the audio material into something like this. And here I record some speech. I mean, of course, there is a lot of effects like, you know, reverb, vibrato, chorus, different delay effects, especially also in the new section here. There is a lot of things going on, but an ancient function which also makes this software very professional in my understanding is this kind of acoustic mirror thing. It's a way of creating reverb or space effects by having different sound settings recorded out in the nature, and they try to compare certain noises, the way they sound in a dry studio, comparing to how they sound in certain different acoustic ambiences. And they, from this, generated a certain setting, which is really interesting. Like, for example, we have this kind of speech here. Let's maybe just take 2 phrases out of it and create a loop. I record. And acoustic mirror is also in a way creating delay or space effects, but it uses these different acoustic mirror impulses which I just tried to describe before. So you have to, of course, browse to the certain location where you store them on your hard drive. This all comes together with the software bundle. And then you can really check these different ambiences, and they sound very authentic. So let's, for example, have the same sentence spoken in a medium classroom. I record some. So this shows you the difference between these two things. Yeah, someone speaking in a classroom and the original voice that had been recorded before. And it's not only about simulating different rooms. You can even simulate different characteristics or ambiences of microphones if you wish so. I will give you one more example from the acoustic mirror effects. Let's browse one more to, for example, the theater. Chicago Theater 50. I record some speech. Or a third example. For example, near the some kind of more artificial thing, yeah. The frog beat effect. Speech. So you see, you can really go nuts. This was just very simple sound effects and examples, and also very simple audio examples. I will now find one maybe interesting loop and then just guide you through an experience of these new effects of SOUNDFORGE 12 Pro Suite, which comes also together with the Spectral Layers 5 Pro. Okay, so now finally in the fifth part, I'm going to use a song called Race Car. Race Car by Rondo Brothers. Also, you find a link in the description below the video. As I also did before, so that we have some more space for the effects to play around, I will kind of normalize this thing down, maybe to -18, sounds good. And actually, I'm going to stop speaking and explaining, and I will just kind of like guide you through different versions of those new effects which are coming with this latest Pro 12 version. Some of those examples, the iZotope RX6 voice denoise, you already found in the podcast explanation where we were kind of reducing the sound. So if you want, you can check back at this point. But on the other hand, I won't use all the effects. It's just to give you a general overview of what this software is capable to do with all these nice effects that are coming with it now. So maybe I will just now create a little loop. And then we go for the effects. Okay, so far so good with these impressions on yeah, I would almost say Sonic SOUNDFORGE, but it's not Sonic anymore, it's not Sony anymore, it's MAGIX SOUNDFORGE Pro 12. This was a ride through different new effects in the end. Please tell me what you like about this video. Please tell me what you were missing. Actually, what I absolutely did not do now is mention anything about the spectral layers, which is also integrated in the suite of SOUNDFORGE. When you go to Tools and then Edit in Spectral Layers Pro, and this kind of opens this whole new universe of Spectral Layers Pro. If you're interested, then I can maybe also my computer is freaking out with these three softwares, but the idea is Spectral Layers Pro. If you want, I can do a special review on this software too. This gives a whole new dimension to sound editing actually. Like for example, you just pick out some few elements of the sounds in a more, let's say, graphical way, yeah? If this one allows me to do so. Or even here you can just paint in some new sound elements right away. It's all not functioning. Okay, yes, you see some new traces here. This is what I try to mention. But for this one, I probably have to kind of find a different hardware setting to be able to show you. Sorry about that. This was the lines that I was painting here. So far, like spectral layers, still a different dimension of working with sound. All best wishes, come back to SSCHNITTLABOR and see you soon.